We are a story-shaped community. And that's never clearer than during Holy Week. When we begin on Palm Sunday with the story of the Passion. It's the Sunday we begin the story in one place and end up somewhere totally different. It's the Sunday that the liturgy begins by proclaiming Hosanna and ends up shouting, "Let him be crucified." It's the Sunday that we start out with the whole city rejoicing, asking, "Who is this?" And we end the week when the centurion says, "Truly this man was the Son of God." But somewhere between that question, "Who is this?" and clearly the Son of God, there's a whole lot of living that takes place that doesn't seem to quite fit such a simple question and answer dialogue. And I think that question for all of us as we celebrate this Triduum is, how do we see ourselves this year, 2013? And how can this story set us free? We've heard the story so often. It's so familiar to us. And maybe we've lost the capacity to be surprised by this incredible story. But maybe the question for us to ask ourselves is, how have I changed this year? How am I different than when I heard the story in 2012? What have I let go of this past year that has indeed freed me up? And maybe, what have I realized this year that I cling to so tenaciously that doesn't make me free, that imprisons me, in fact? So the question is, do I have the courage? Do I have the room to see and acknowledge that my story is mirrored in Jesus' story, somehow, mysteriously? That my story indeed has been shaped by the story of Jesus. So where am I tonight in these stories that we just heard? Some say that Holy Thursday is the most complex and profound celebration of the Church's liturgical year after the Easter Vigil. And the feast gives us a whole wealth of mysteries to ponder. It's a celebration of the Passover. It's the institution of the Eucharist. It's the establishment of the ministerial priesthood. The washing of the feet. All profound human actions. And all taking place during the meal that Jesus shares with his apostles. Only hours before he'll be arrested, tortured, executed. So, what draws my attention this year? What do I hear? What turns my ear and my eye? How am I hearing these very familiar stories with a new heart, with new ears? Or do I just have to say, what were those stories? What were those readings I just heard? So let me offer three words for us to think about, maybe to give a focus to these questions. The first word is freedom. Jesus celebrates this Passover meal with his disciples. It's the commemoration of the Israelites' exodus from slavery to freedom, to the promised land. Similarly, the new Passover of Jesus frees us from the slavery of sin. So this Holy Thursday might be a good time for me to ask, how more free am I this year in comparison to last year? Is there anything that still enslaves me? An addiction, a fear, self-centeredness, a resentment? Secondly, bread and wine. At the Last Supper, Jesus took these common forms of nourishment and transformed them into his body and blood, the Eucharist. And he did so with a directive and a promise. The directive was, do this in memory of me. And the promise is inherent in that directive. I will remain with you forever. So how do I show my love for this incredible gift of the Eucharist? Nourished daily by his body and blood. How do I nourish others? And then the final word is towel. Towel. Jesus wrapped a towel around his waist, and he was really donning a makeshift apron. He was performing the task, the menial task of a slave. And he showed the hallmark of Christian discipleship. The hallmark of discipleship. And that is unconditional love and humble service. So who needs my unconditional love today? Whom might I serve? And I can't say that without thinking of Pope Francis, who today in Rome celebrated this Eucharist that we're celebrating in a prison for youth, where he washed the feet of young men and women in that prison. So on this Holy Thursday, 2013, we gather once again to hear these stories. How am I different? We celebrate the freedom, we break the bread, we share the cup, and we humbly don our aprons in loving service of others. Frederick Faber, a composer of hymns, has a wonderful hymn, and this line is wonderful. There's a wideness in God's mercy, like the wideness of the sea. So what if our doctrine of biblical inspiration is spacious enough to see the interplay between what really happened 2,000 years ago and the 1,001 stories in this room, in this city, in our world? Stories that get told over and over again. The 1,001 ways the retelling shapes new communities and the lives of their members. All of those stories are about redemption, healing, and freeing. So let's pray as we tell these stories once again. And our lives and the life of this community are reshaped and renewed. That we will experience the redemption we need, the healing we need, and the freedom we need.